You are alive here today, thanks to creativity. So let me take you on a little journey to the past to show you what I mean by this. 2.5 million years ago, you're a prehistoric human, and you're trying your best to survive. But you notice that the other predators, they seem to be faster, they're stronger, and they're overall more deadly than you are. So then what do you have that ensures that survival? Well, you have creativity. You took some sticks and stones, and you made spears and swords. You took animal hides, which you made into cloth, which later became clothes. That human innovation and ingenuity is one of the main things that secured our spot on the top of the food chain. The earliest sign of human creativity, it's not necessarily cave paintings, but rather it's when we saw something new from something that was already there. So now let me ask you something, and feel free to raise your hands, but who here would say that they have a creative hobby that they regularly engage in? Coloring, sketching, crocheting, I would say a bit less than half of the room. But now if I made that question in the past tense, and if I were to ask who here had a creative hobby as a child, storytelling, play pretend, coloring, drawing, yeah. And now this is almost the entire room. So what happened to that innate creativity? Because I think that creativity is humanity and humanity is creativity. We wouldn't be here without it, and honestly, it wouldn't be here without us either. But then the natural question is, if it was here throughout our history, but also in our own lives, where did it go? And I think a nice way to think about it is, imagine that creativity is like a flame. In a way that a flame needs wood and oxygen to burn, creativity needs time and it needs effort to be nurtured. So then the natural question from here is, where is our time and effort being put into, if not into our innate creativity, right? Well, now I have to talk about our phone use a little bit. I know, I'm sorry. But a policy brief published last year by the OECD showed that there is a correlation between high average screen time, anything higher than 5 hours, with low subjective well-being. This included things such as low mental well-being, but also low sense of life purpose, and even low sense of life satisfaction. These are very serious things when you think about them. To be fair, the policy brief also explains that there's many other factors at play, such as your employment status and how lonely you are, but the correlation is still undeniably there. This is something that I've noticed in my own life as well, and I know that a lot of you will relate, but the more time I spend on my phone, the worse I feel, but then the worse I feel, the more time I just want to spend on my phone because that's just easy. That's the thing to do that doesn't require effort. But then going from here, there's another problem that arises, and that is that if you spend a lot of time on your phone, you're more likely going to be spending it on social media. And social media feeds into consumerism. Some of you might remember a trend that was quite popular last year called underconsumption. And this trend, there's an article by CBS News published on it that explains it, but the gist of it is just that a lot of young people were very frustrated with the amount of overconsumption they were seeing both online and offline, that they just wanted to buy less. And again, this is something I've noticed in my own life as well, and in that of my friends and my family. We're all just tired of buying things to make ourselves feel better, and then they end up on our shelves collecting dust. I do have to admit that there is a small flaw with the metaphor I mentioned about the flame, and that I don't think that creativity can ever fully be extinguished. So now that I've presented a few problems, and I was trying to come up with ways in which I can break the cycle of constant doom scrolling, so to speak, of not feeling creative, not feeling fulfilled, and just overall not feeling too good about how social media works in my life, I realized very early on no single person can change the entire structure of every social media out there. But what we can change is our mindsets. So here's what I want you to do. Next time you see something that you want, which is bound to happen since we're all human, but next time that happens, ask yourself, can I make this? And if not, can I make something creative with it? It's just that simple question. And it might even seem too simple at first. But when you start to ask yourself this before everything that you buy, you're going to realize how easy some things are to just make by yourself. An example for this I like to use is coasters. Coasters are actually very easy to make, they're very versatile, and my personal first go-to is I can just crochet some coasters, right? But let's say in this hypothetical scenario, you don't know how to crochet and you don't really feel like picking up this new intricate craft just to make yourself some coasters. If you open your cutlery drawer, you might find a set of those single-use wooden chopsticks that you get from takeout that you've just forgotten in the bottom of that drawer. Well, if you just break those in half, glue them in a little square, paint them a little bit, customize them, then congratulations, you have made yourselves a coaster. It truly is that simple. So now I'm not going to stand here and tell you all the different ways in which you can make coasters. That's really not the point. But the point is that the possibilities are endless. No two people, even given the exact same supplies, are going to come up with the same thing. Even right now, all of us have a different version of that chopsticks coaster that I described. Mine is blue with sparkles, for anyone who wonders. Let's say that the answer to the first part of that question is no. I want something that I don't really feel like I can recreate myself. Let's say you need a couch or new curtains for your home. I'm not going to tell you to make yourselves a couch, but maybe you can make something creative with it then. Maybe you can add some embroidery to it. Just put in that extra time and that extra effort into the something that makes it yours. Because that then becomes your couch, and those are now your curtains. Because you've done this extra thing that makes you feel more fulfilled, and that makes them not just blend into the background of your room anymore. Because now they're yours. Something that you might point out at this stage is, yes, but all of this takes too much time. And unfortunately, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that is the whole point. The point is that it's supposed to take time, and it is to distract you from your phone. So ultimately, it's your choice whether you want to put your time and effort into engaging and nurturing that creativity. But I do have to admit that it's especially gratifying when you choose to invest that time and effort into making something for someone else. I've personally been crocheting for about a decade now, and I always give crocheted gifts to my friends and my family, and they love it. They think it's very sweet, and I do also really like how I'm not constrained to the current trends or to what I can find in stores, but the only real ceiling is my imagination, if we can even call that a ceiling, because it's very easy to think outside of the box, so to speak. I have to say, I think my favorite part about being so creatively engaged in everyday life is that the whole world around you at some point starts to shift. If you yourself make that switch from being a consumer back to a creator, that empty box of cookies that you're going to just throw away without thinking twice about might just be the exact last craft supply that you needed to finish your project. An example that I notice all the time in my own life is every time that I'm working on a different craft and I walk into the same exact craft store, the store looks like a completely new place to me. The time that I was working on a bag, I instinctively looked at the buttons on the wall. But then sometime after that, when I was working on a pouch, I walked into the same craft store, but this time I noticed the zippers. The zippers that were next to the buttons, but that I just completely glossed over because in that moment, I didn't need them for my creativity. Sometime after that, I was working on decorating some candles, and then I instinctively looked and noticed every item that contained wax so I could melt it down and use it for my own project. This creative lens is innate to humans, but we just don't choose to nurture that creativity as much as we probably should. So now here's what I want you to take away from all of this. Next time that you see something that you want, just ask yourself, can I actually make this? And if not, can I make something creative with it? Because chances are, and I truly have faith in you, you can. Making coasters, one example of many, is much easier. I bet most of you have never even thought about a chopsticks coaster. Honestly, just pick up that hobby that you've been meaning to, because even if it takes you 10 failures on that 11th time, you're going to get it just right, and it's going to feel so incredibly rewarding. Because I know that for myself, Some of my proudest achievements are things that I've made with my own two hands, and I want everyone to know that that same satisfaction is at your fingertips. Thank you.